The judge barely looked up when she said, "Your marriage is officially dissolved." For months I thought those words would feel like freedom. Instead, they landed with a strange kind of silence. 15 years had ended in less than a minute. I walked out of the courthouse carrying nothing except a folder of papers and the uncomfortable realization that I had spent years trying to save something that had already disappeared. I sat in my car for almost 10 minutes before making the only call I had planned. "Dad, you okay? I will be." He waited. He always knew when I wasn't finished. "Fire all 35 employees my former in-laws placed inside the company." There was a pause. "Are you certain?" "I've never been more certain. I'll handle it." That was the entire conversation. Our family owned a manufacturing company worth roughly $10 million. My father remained chairman while I had served as operations director for years. During my marriage, every request from my wife's family sounded reasonable on its own. A cousin needs a fresh start. My uncle has years of management experience. A family friend deserves a chance. Each hire looked harmless. Together, they slowly reshaped departments I had once known inside and out. Whenever I questioned another recommendation, my wife accused me of distrusting her family. "They're trying to help us." Eventually, I stopped arguing. Keeping peace at home seemed easier than creating another weekend of cold silence. That decision followed me for years. The divorce changed more than my address. It removed the obligation to confuse loyalty with good judgment. Less than an hour after my call, Human Resources began delivering notices. Every dismissal followed company policy. Severance packages had already been approved. Security procedures were respectful. Nobody was escorted out dramatically. It was business, not revenge. Still, I felt sick. 35 families would experience uncertainty because I had waited far too long to act. Around midday, my father called. "You should come to the office." His voice revealed nothing. When I arrived, our compliance manager and outside auditors were already seated in the conference room. A spreadsheet covered the display access logs, vendor approvals, tunnel communications. None of it looked dramatic until someone explained what we were seeing. Over the previous 18 months, several of those employees had repeatedly accessed confidential supplier contracts unrelated to their jobs. Others approved unusually favorable purchasing agreements involving businesses connected to my former in-laws. Individually, each decision looked explainable. Together, they formed a pattern. No money had disappeared. Nothing criminal had yet been proven, but every safeguard designed to prevent conflicts of interest had quietly weakened. The lead auditor closed her notebook. If today's personnel changes hadn't happened, we would have recommended immediate intervention within weeks. I leaned back without saying anything. For months, I wondered whether I had become bitter after the divorce. Instead, I discovered I had simply stopped ignoring warning signs. My father placed one hand on the conference table. "You didn't make this happen today." "No, you just finally responded to it." That sentence stayed with me. By early evening, news had spread farther than I expected. At 7:15 p.m., someone pounded on my front door hard enough to shake the frame. When I opened it, my former mother-in-law stood outside. Her face wasn't sad. It was furious. "You've lost your mind." I said nothing. "You think because the divorce is final you can destroy people's lives?" They were company employees. Their family. They were both. She stepped closer. "You will call your father right now and tell him to reverse every termination." I looked at her for several seconds before answering. "I can't. You won't. Both." For years I would have explained myself. I would have apologized for upsetting everyone. I would have searched for words capable of calming someone who had never wanted calm. Only anklets. This time silence felt stronger. She continued demanding explanations I no longer owed. Before I could answer, another vehicle stopped outside. Our company's legal counsel stepped out, followed by a security manager. My father had anticipated that emotions might spill beyond the office and asked them to deliver additional documents requiring my signature. They reached the porch just as the conversation reached its loudest point. The attorney greeted me first. Everything has been finalized. He then acknowledged my former mother-in-law politely. The employment decisions were made through established corporate authority following internal review. Any future concerns should be directed through legal channels. Nothing theatrical happened. Nobody argued. Nobody threatened anyone. The conversation simply ended. For the first time in years, someone else had clearly established the boundary I had struggled to maintain. She stared at all of us for a long moment before walking back to her car without another word. The street became quiet again. I signed the remaining documents. The attorney wished me a peaceful evening. The security manager nodded once before leaving. When the cars disappeared, I stood alone on my porch. The company still faced months of rebuilding trust. Some departments would need new leadership. Policies would become stricter. Relationships inside the business would take time to heal. None of that guaranteed success. But for the first time in a long while, our decisions would belong to the people responsible for protecting the company, not preserving someone else's influence. My divorce hadn't solved every problem. It simply removed the excuse I had been hiding behind. Sometimes reclaiming your life doesn't begin with winning an argument. Sometimes it begins with accepting that a closed door is healthier than one left open for people who never respected the home in the first place. If you'd like, I can also write a version with even stronger emotional tension while keeping it realistic and YouTube safe.